In this video, I'm going to take you behind the scenes and break down how we photograph this headshot of Magic Mike Live Star Pip. Hey everyone, my name is Reynolds. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, then don't forget to hit the like or share button or subscribe if you are watching this on YouTube. So in this video, I want to break down how we photographed this Magic Mike Live Star. So Pip has been a friend of mine for a couple of years now, and I called him up and said, Pip, I really want to take some new headshots. I don't have a lot of guys in my portfolio, so he was happy to help us out. So we did quite a few different setups. We went in different rooms. We got various different shots, which I'm really pleased about. But the one shot that I'm really pleased about that I want to take you through and break down is the headshot that we got of Pip right at the very end of the shoot. So I want to break it down and show you guys exactly how I did it and how you can potentially recreate it yourself. All right, so let's start with the camera. I use the Canon 5D Mark III. It's been my workhorse, my go-to camera for years now. The lens I used was the 100mm macro, the non-L version, the non-IS version, which still is really good to me. It's one of my favorite headshot lenses. I think if you're shooting headshots, I think anything between 70 to 200mm are good focal lengths for headshots. And if you want to learn a little bit more about headshots, then just click the card up there and that will take you to my tutorial on 3 ways to up your headshot game. So the settings on my camera were f8, 1/125th of a second, ISO 200. Okay, so my key light was a Pixapro CITI600Pro. If you want a reliable battery-powered flash, it's their flagship model. It's so great. What I love about this flash is the modeling light is so much more powerful than the previous CITI600, so I can really see, even in bright ambient conditions, where my light is going to be hitting. And the modifier I used on my key light was a 55cm beauty dish with the grid attached. So I kept the grid on, and what's nice about using grids is that channels that light forward, gives you a lot more contrast, and it stops the light from spilling left and right, maybe hitting the background or even hitting anything else and bouncing back. So this just projects it nice and forward, so you can see the dish there, but when I turn it, it goes. So that therefore it's not going to be hitting the camera, it's only going to be shooting this way, but it will hit the camera now. So that's what's really great about using grids. I use them all the time, and this was really key for this setup. Key. And for the fill light, we used the Ricoh 400 ring flash by Pixapro. I use this all the time. This for me is what gives it that painterly quality to the images, and it fills in the light on the unlit side of the face. So if the light was here, then it just fills in those shadows and gives you more wiggle room with the shadow slider in Lightroom, so that I can really pull back some of that detail because I've used this ring flash. It's a great light. It's the best fill light you'll ever use. I would totally recommend this fill light. The power was set quite low. It was around 2 stops underneath my key. I was kind of playing around, like give or take 1/3 of a stop. So it was metering at around f4. And the way I was able to meter my lights was using my light meter. This is a Sekonic L308S. This allows me to dial in my exposure perfectly, and if you want to learn more about how to use a light meter properly, then just click the card up there and that will take you to my video why you should be using a light meter. For the background light, we didn't actually use another studio strobe, we actually used a portable light. We actually used the PIKA200, and the main reason I like to use PIKA200s as my background lights is because I'm able to attach these MagMod grids, which is really cool. So MagMod holder there, you can put gels, snoots, anything you want on here. I like to put a grid, and then I like to set that up and throw that hit in the background. And just like the beauty dish, I want this grid on here so that I get a nice beam of light. I don't want it too widespread, so it just hits the center of the background, and so it still creates a nice vignette effect because there's a grid on here and it's only throwing it forward, it's not throwing it left and right. So that's one of the main reasons I use the Pikas, because I can throw a grid on these lights. And if you want to learn more about these lights and how powerful they are, these are my go-to for travel photography. If you want to see just how much you can get out of a single PIKA200, then just click the card up in the corner and that'll take you to a playlist of all of my travel stuff. The trigger we use on top of my camera was the Pixapro ST4. It's been out for about a year now. It's a great trigger, I love it. It's very easy to dial in your light power if you are using multiple lights, which we were here. The last element to this setup was using a black flag. Now this is something that I'm quite new to myself, so I'm still learning about it as we go, but what's great about using a black flag is I'm able to just cheek it in ever so slightly, and that's going to cut out some of the light from that beauty dish. And what that's going to do is that's going to darken the corner of Pip's face and his shoulder slightly, just to emphasize the brightest part of the image, which is obviously his face. You're naturally drawn to the brightest parts of the image, so obviously I want people to be more drawn to Pip's face than his shoulder. So for that, I wanted to bring down the brightness of his shoulder, so I use a flag to do that. The positioning of the flag can be really finicky, because if Pip leans back too much, then he's going to be caught in that flag. If he leans too forward, then you're just not really going to see the effects of the black flag. And here's a pro tip: if you are using a black flag, if you want it more defined, more of a straight line, then bring that flag closer to your subject, or if you want it more feathered, then you bring it away from your subject. So here's an example of what this image looked like with only the key light. As you can see, there's nothing wrong with it, but it lacks a little bit of depth. It could have more drama to it. So using the trigger, I built it up. So here is also what it looks like with the background light only. So you can see that background light isn't hitting Pip at all. It is purely just my background light. And having the grid on there really helps, as I said, just to eliminate any spill, so it's only hitting the background light. So again, you're taking control of your lights, not the other way around, okay? Here is what the image looked like with the fill light on by itself. You can see the fill light doesn't look too pretty, really. Doesn't look very nice on its own, but that's okay because it's just a fill light. It's not supposed to be that bright. It would be very difficult to just switch on all 3, 4, or 5 lights, however many you're having, and just fire them all at once. It's very hard to understand where it might all be coming from. So you just build it up. You start with the key and then you work from there. So here's what it looks like with the key and the fill light. And then when you add the background light, and then when you finally add the black flag, it all comes together. Once all the lighting was in place, then it was just a game of repositioning Pip, working with his expression, working with slightly different angles to get the look that we want. As you can see, when we first started this setup, Pip was quite straight on. It didn't feel right, it was lacking a bit of depth. So I had Pip turn ever so slightly to the side and then kind of chin down. So it's amazing how these tiny little movements can really make the difference. When you're kind of leaning forward into the camera right versus leaning back like this, it's not very inviting if someone's just like that. But if someone's leaning in like this and they're kind of leaning forward, there's a little bit more of a story there. I'm engaging more with the camera, aren't I? But we started actually with a completely different setup, different outfit, different lighting. So it took us a while to get to this point. And if you look here, we actually started with a different background. Pip was wearing a different top and we were using a Snoot versus a beauty dish. And as you can see from the examples, it was just a bit too dramatic. It was too dark. And I didn't like the background. It was kind of a shiny surface background, which was reflecting, in my eyes, too much back at me, and it was too distracting. The lighting was the same, except the key light was a Snoot instead of the beauty dish. But we stopped filming and I said to Pip, let's try something else. Let's try the wall opposite us instead, because it's a bit lighter and it's kind of a matte finish. And I wanted to use the beauty dish because I didn't want it to be as harsh as the previous setup. So if it's not going right straight away, just bear with it, take a moment, take a breather, and just reflect and just think, how can I make this better? What little changes can I make to make a big difference? And you will eventually get there, so don't be too disheartened, work at it, work with your subject, work with your creative team, get their opinion, and then you will eventually get there, I promise. Well, that's about it from me, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked it, please make sure you hit that like or share button, or subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. And as always, I will see you again next time. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.